In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to paint this beautiful morning snow glow painting using only water mixable oils. No thinners, no solvents, which is perfect for any beginner painter out there just diving into water mixable oils, or the more health conscious painter out there. Let's get into it. All the paints and all the mediums we're going to use are water mixable oils. The colors we're using are titanium white. Any black will do, but I'm using Ivory Black. I'm going to use Prussian blue, but you can substitute in Phthalo blue, which you'll see more in a moment, and Alizarin Crimson. And the medium we're going to be using today is a water mixable linseed oil. The brushes we'll be using is a 2-inch brush, a 1-inch brush, a fan brush, a larger one if you have one, and a palette knife, but the palette knife is just for mixing up colors. We won't be really using it, but the best two out of all of these is using a shop towel. I really recommend getting these because I use them just like a paintbrush. The very first thing you want to do is make sure you apply a nice thin coat of liquid white. Now, if you're not sure how to apply a thin coat of liquid white, good news is I've got a video, I'll put it in the top right corner, that shows you how to nail it every single time and gives you awesome tips to make sure you don't fail at it. Now take your 1-inch brush and tap in some Alizarin Crimson just into the bristles so it's an even application. From here, we can do some light cross strokes on the upper middle half of our canvas. This will establish our morning glow. Work out in a circular pattern doing some small cross strokes. Now the trick here is, you want to leave some gaps and apply pressure in different spots, but allow it to mix with that undercoat of liquid white and it'll become more pink as it goes out to the outer edges of our canvas. Let's brighten up this morning glow a little bit by adding a little punch of color. Take some Alizarin Crimson and scratch in some spots where you think the sunlight is punching through. Time to make this velvet smooth, and for that, we're gonna use a 2-inch brush. Work in the same pattern we just did. Longer cross strokes this time, and apply light pressure as you start out in the center, and I want you to apply harder pressure as you work your way out from the center. The reason this is important is, 1, you're gonna work off excess color as you get to the outside, which is gonna help us build layers and have paint stick easier, but number 2 is it's going to add to the effect of that sun pulling away from that light source. It goes from an intense red to a light baby pink. Now, if you have any excess paint on your paintbrush, I recommend pulling it down towards the center, which will add to the snow effect and glow we're gonna add later. Let's add to the cold burr effect of our sky. I'm gonna make a light blue that's knocked down a little bit. To create this, I'm gonna use just a little bit of Prussian blue mixed with white, looking for a light blue color here. Now take your 1-inch paintbrush and do some cross strokes in the top right and top left corner and apply a little bit of pressure. Now connect the 2 points across and pull that color down towards our red. You don't need much color here and you don't need much pressure, and yes, you want to leave a white gap because we'll blend it together. With the excess paint left on your paintbrush, on the bottom left and right corner, start pulling the color from out to in to meet that morning glow that we created earlier. This will be our shadow colors for later when we apply snow on top of it, making it a good template for us. Time to blend smooth again. I'm gonna take my 2-inch brush and blend in the bottom first because there's such little color. I'm gonna do a couple cross strokes to make everything just work out that excess color like I said before, then pull everything in towards the center from the outside of the canvas just to make straight lines so it's a nice easy visualization for me. But don't worry too much about making this perfect. We just want nice soft blended colors, and we want to work off the excess paint because we will be building on top of this later. Clean off any excess paint that is on your paintbrush by rubbing it off on a towel or a rag. Now with your 2-inch brush, start pulling that blue in our sky down towards the red morning glow. You don't need much pressure here, and take your time because blue is such a strong color that it'll overtake your red quickly. I actually recommend just bringing it down to the white because we can pull the red up in just a moment. Work off any excess blue that's on your paintbrush and make sure it's really clean. Now pull your red up into the blue and white, and you should have a beautiful gradient that goes from a very strong red to a baby pink to an ice white to a nice ice cold blue. Now take some titanium white, Prussian blue, and our leftover sky color and mix up a nice dark ice color. We want this to be slightly darker than our ice sky color here. So take some time and mix something good that you like. When you got the color that you like, take your 2-inch brush and load the corner of our brush. Pull the color through and then push the actual brush up into the paint to create a nice ridge. This will also help you create a nice chiseled edge to help create our branches. Time to create some awesome trees. Approach your canvas, and if you're right-handed, start on the right, and if you're left-handed, start on the left. You want to take the corner of your brush and start tapping in from an angle that's off canvas and start pulling down and in and start adding a slight zigzag motion. When you put a little more pressure, it's gonna look like thousands of leaves or thousands of pine needles are hanging off of this branch that you are creating. Now the trick here is to do one branch or stem at a time. As you feel more comfortable, start adding in some zigzag motions, and remember to leave some branches long, some short, some in clusters, and some sparse. Now, yes, you will run out of paint multiple times, especially if you're a new painter, so it's okay to reload your brush multiple times. But please remember, these are somewhat distant trees, so they don't need a lot of color. And if you put too much color on, it's gonna be hard to stick snow on top of them in just a moment. Now, all you have to do is do the same thing on the other side. Take your time here. Feel free to pause the video. Go at your own pace. The only thing that I ask that you do is bring both of these trees down to the horizon line. And as you get to that horizon line there, you don't need a lot of paint. It's okay if you start losing a little bit of color on your brush, because we are gonna put things in front of it, which is gonna help us later. So don't overdo it. Now, I personally like to kind of make a template of my trees, take a small 5-minute break, look at it from a distance, and then add some extra details here and there. Maybe I want some harder edges on my branches, or I want them to be softer, so I'll push a little harder or tap a little bit more, or maybe even add more branches to make it look like it's got more clusters in certain spots. Take your time here and have a little bit of fun. All right, time to add some morning snow to our trees that we just created. And for that, we're gonna use the water mixable liquid white that we created earlier, which is what we use for our liquid base, and put a little bit of red into that just to give it a little bit of color. Now you don't have to do this. You can leave it just white, which looks awesome, but I wanted to mix mine up a little bit. But here is it with just white, so you pick and choose what you think is best. Now load your 2-inch brush in the exact same way you did your trees. Make sure you tap the color in and create that nice ridge, because that'll make it easier for you to apply your highlights on top of your trees. Now, when you approach your canvas, you actually want to put the color just slightly above where you put your blue. This will make it easier for your paint to stick on top, creating easier highlights. But don't be afraid to mix some of that highlight color into the blue. I recommend adding a zigzag motion and dissipate that color away as you get closer to the trunk of the tree. That's what would naturally happen as light is coming from the back and going around the branches. It would fade. Now take some time here and think where light would actually strike your branches. You can add a lot of snow or a little bit of snow. Everybody's gonna have their own appeal, but I do recommend adding a little bit on the ends of the branches, because that's where the snow would catch most in my imagination, and I think you will like it as well. Stepping in here really quick, the next step you would do if you're following the Bob Ross tutorial is you would actually add some distant background bottom trees and bushes here. And all you need to do is just use a slightly darker blue than your trees that you used for on the side. Take it all the way across your horizon line, and don't forget to tap it in so it looks like it's in the distance like you see here on screen. You can even tap it out to be more faded if you want, but to each their own. But for my tutorial here, I want to do something a little different, so let's move on to foreground trees. Since our light source is in the back, it's going to give us silhouetted trees, so use a combination of black and blue, or just straight black, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Now, I personally need a guideline for my tree. I'm gonna dash one in here by making a straight line at a slight angle, because my tree is going to be on a hill, and this will represent the trunk of the tree that I can build my tree shape off of. Now, a common problem for brand new painters out there, like you can see right here, is you're going to mud mix when you're building your tree on top of other wet layers. And that's because I'm using paint right out of the tube to give you an example. But you know what? I don't care. We're only going to concentrate on the basic shape for our tree. I recommend using the corner of your fan brush and start working in a zigzag pattern. As you come down the tree, open up the bristles more so they can bloom to create beautiful branches, and start going in a more down and out from your branches to build bigger and bolder branches. Now, we can correct this by adding more paint on top of it by adding a drop or two of your water mixable linseed oil to your black paint. This will allow you to add deeper textures and paint on top of this tree. And since we already have the outline of our tree and the basic template, it's more easy for you to visualize where paint needs to go. So again, if you're struggling with mud mixing, don't worry about it. Just power through and create that shape, and we can always go back on top of it with the correct paint later on. Of course, our tree needs a little friend, so let's go ahead and drop in a guideline. Make this shorter than your first tree because that'll add to the perspective, and maybe these grew at different times. Make up your own story. Once you have your guideline, remember to zigzag and go down and out. The good news is for this tree here, since there's less paint already on the canvas, your black paint that's creating your tree will stick a lot easier. Take your time and have fun creating all those branches and details that you want. You know what? I think I made my foreground trees a little too low, but hey, it's okay, we can correct it. Let's put something that balances it out first. On my right hand side, I'm gonna put in just a gentle, very light snow bank. I'm gonna use the same color that was the highlight for my background trees there, which is a little bit of liquid white and a little bit of red. Now on my mind, this is barely visible because the morning glow is kind of just blowing it out. Gonna drop it in with a fan brush and just follow the angles of what I think the slope would do. Once I have the angles in there, I'm gonna feather it out with a clean 1-inch brush. Since I accidentally brought my trees down just a little too much, let's remove the excess paint. I'm gonna take my palette knife and scrape away the color I don't need and follow the angle of what I will shape my slope to be in front of it. From here, I'm just gonna take a clean shop blue rag and scrape out the excess color. Now I don't want to eliminate all the black because that's gonna make a nice undertone of a shadow color that would be falling on top of our snow. Let's put some bushes over on the right hand side. We're gonna use the same color as our foreground trees, but use our 1-inch brush and load it up with a lot of color. Now when it comes to bushes, all you gotta do is just push in and slightly push up to bend the bristles on your brush. When you do it correctly, it's gonna look like there's a bunch of leaves sprouting out the top of your bushes. Now add a few bumps and angles here, but I do recommend adding a small template because you can always build up and out from where you are on your bushes. But I do recommend at least have on the right side your bush be a little higher and then taper down to the center of the horizon. So that way it kind of looks like we can build a slope or a riverbank or a walkway through a little later on in the painting. Just like we did with our trees, I'm gonna work off the excess paint on the bottom of my bushes. I'm gonna take my palette knife and scrape away in the direction that I wanna build my slope, and then take a clean shop towel, one of those nice blue ones, which you can learn more about in the video description below, and wipe away any excess color, but don't take away all of it because again, this will make a nice shadow underneath our bush. Since I have so much paint on top of my foreground trees and bushes, I'm gonna struggle putting highlights on them. So let's make it easier for me and for you and do this little trick. Let's take a shop towel and lay it gingerly on top of my trees. Now get a shop towel that will be the size of your tree, gently push it on there and then pull your finger up and down so that way it pushes onto that extra oil paint you don't need. Once you've made enough contact, pull and peel it directly away from the canvas and it will take away all that excess oil and paint. Do the same thing with your bushes in the exact same fashion. Pull cleanly away, and now your trees will still look the exact same, but it'll be 10 times easier putting highlights on top of them. All right, time to highlight our trees, and you want to make your own version of water mixable liquid white. Now use titanium white and add some water mixable linseed oil and find out which viscosity works best for your painting and trees and landscape. Take your fan brush through it and slowly start tapping in from where your light source is. Since our morning glow is in the middle, all of our main highlights should lay on the right side of our trees. Now, when it comes to building highlights on top of a tree, I recommend that you take your time. Work in a slower fashion so that way you don't over mud mix. Now don't be afraid if you do mud mix because that's going to make mid-tones within your tree there. If you over mud mix or you see it happening a little too much, you know what? Take away your paintbrush, wipe it off clean on a blue shop towel, then reintroduce more highlight color and go back and get your tree. Always remember, Don't eliminate all of your dark spots. That's going to help make your tree look more three-dimensional on this 2D plane. All right, let's move on to highlighting our bushes, and we're going to use the same exact liquid white color we just used on our trees, except we're going to use a 1-inch brush. Load up that brush with a good amount of paint and tap it in on your mixing palette. This will allow your bristles to bloom and open up. Now, when you approach your canvas, you want to push in slightly and bend the bristles just a little bit as you go up. And you want to make sure you apply your highlights just slightly above your bushes. Doing this will make it a lot easier for brand new painters to apply highlights. So make sure you try applying just slightly above. Now, in my mind, this is a cold environment, so I'm going to actually add some cold highlights to my trees really quick. Gonna take a little bit of blue and white and just make a nice blue light steel color here and apply it to the left side of my trees. I'm not gonna overdo it, but I do feel like there's a little bit of heavy snow that fell the night before, so I'm gonna tap in more than I probably should, but that's just my flair and taste. You do what you want because it's your landscape. Hey, congratulations, you made it all the way to the bottom of the painting. Now, from here, it's basically just laying in a bunch of different snowbanks on a slope. I personally like to use a fan brush, but feel free to use a filbert, an angled shader, or a round brush, whatever you feel most comfortable with. Load it up with a titanium white and pull your paint down in an angle that's gonna mimic a slope. Now, it's okay from when you pull from your bushes or your trees if you grab a little bit of that highlight color or dark color underneath. Remember, this is gonna add to that shadow effect. I'm gonna pull towards that morning glow and add different angles and a little bit of an S curve just to give it more shape, as if the snow is melting down to that actual plane where the morning glow is dancing across. Now, you can make this morning glow a walkway, a river, or a trail path. It's really up to you, and you can change it as you go. But think about how the land has all these different shapes and slopes to it. Now, when you've got all your basic snow color in, I actually like to add some undertone of shadow, which is just using my blue color and scratching it in with my fan brush. Now, to make this more effective, think about where your light wouldn't hit to create a shadow effect, which would generally be behind your trees or behind your bushes, or maybe there's an indentation in the snow. You kind of need to make a little bit of a story to figure out where these should go. When you have them all in, all you need to do is feather them down and out. Since these slopes are a little bit more in the mid to background, they shouldn't have a lot of detail, so go ahead and feather them out to what you think is best for your perspective in the landscape. Now, this landscape to me is all about that warm morning glow on the snow, which means I'm gonna make a bunch of different snowbanks and snow slopes. Take your 1-inch brush and load it with titanium white paint, and think about where your snowbanks and snow slopes would come down and intersect with that morning glow on the bottom of our canvas. I recommend leaving gaps in between so that way you can build different planes and slopes more easily. Now, since this is white paint on top of very light white blue and white pink, it's going to be a little hard to see on camera. Hopefully it's a little easier for you if you're following along, but just remember to leave a little bit of contrast between each new plane you build, so that way it will look like there's separation between all these different layers that you're building. Just like we did with our slopes and planes in the background, let's add a little bit of shadow color. That's gonna really make things look more natural and pop and really stand out from each layer to layer. Again, I'm gonna use my fan brush and scratch in some ice blue color on where I think the light really didn't get to a certain spot, or perhaps there's an indentation in the snow. Or if you're gonna make something like a walkway or a riverbank, you can put it where your snow meets that walkway and maybe had a little melting point to make that ridge stand out. Have a little fun here. Again, making a little bit of a story helps you figure out where things should go in your environment. When you have all the blue and shadow color where you want it to be, don't forget to feather it in. If you're working from the furthest point closest to you, I recommend feather a little more, and then as you get closer to our perspective, feather less, because there would be more detail from our personal perspective in this environment the closer you are to it. I'm a huge fan of texture, probably one of the reasons why I love oil paint so much. I'm going to take my fan brush, take it through some titanium white paint, and cut it through so that way a lot of paint sits on the edge of my bristles. And I'm going to feather this in on certain spots where I want texture to sit on top of my snow. This essentially is going to look like specular highlights. They're going to look like actual pockets of snow that are standing out from the canvas. Now the trick here is kind of having a light touch at times and more of a pressure touch at times. I know, really confusing, but as you drag that paintbrush across your canvas, the canvas and brush is going to grab what it wants off the bristles and create these awesome little streaks and strokes and paint breaks. It's something that you can only really experience from feel and the natural touch of the paint grabbing the canvas. I recommend have a light touch to start. If nothing is really grabbing, push a little harder until you find a happy spot. But having a light touch will get you some nice clusters of snow, and having a more forceful touch will have a nice little smooth transition. Play around with it, have some fun, and whatever you don't like, hey, remember you can always feather it out and you'll be fine to try again and again. That is another cool thing about oil. So don't sweat it too much, have a little bit of fun here. And again, think about where those clusters of specular highlights would be within your painting. I personally want to add a little bit more to the morning glow effect of my walkway or frozen lake, whatever you think it is. I'm going to take my fan brush, load it up with a little bit of Alizarin Crimson and titanium white, and start scratching in brush strokes in a U shape as I work from the back where my bushes and trees are towards the foreground here, and make sure to work up and around my snowbanks to give the added effect of depth. At certain times, I'm going to push a little harder on my brush strokes here just to get a little bit more of a specular highlight, which is going to add to the depth of the painting. Now remember, when you're all done with this step here, clean off your fan brush so it's completely clean of all the titanium white and alizarin crimson, and start fading in what we just put in that goes up and around your snowbanks to create the illusion of different planes of slopes and banks here. I actually had a little bit of leftover liquid titanium white paint that I mixed up for a lot of my other parts in this painting, and you know what? I'm a frugal painter and I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to take a clean fan brush, dip it into that liquid white titanium paint mixture that we have, and add just a few specular highlights on top of our background trees here. I'm going to think where the snow kind of hit the heaviest and weighed down the trees, but you do what you want. I would recommend probably putting them near the tips, but again, it's your landscape. Don't overdo it, but have a little bit of fun here just to add some extra little flavor and character to your landscape. Hey, I just want to take a moment and say thanks for watching and painting along. I'm curious to know though, which one's your favorite? Do you like the colder version with the Prussian blue and the mixed highlights to give it that nice wind chill factor? Or do you like it with the phthalo blue with the stark white highlights and that vibrant, bright morning look? I actually like both, but I'd be curious to know which one you like. If you want to see more easy to do painting tutorials from me using either traditional oils or water mixable oils, you got to do me a favor and go down below. Of course, hit like and subscribe on this video, but more importantly, leave me a comment on what you want to see so that way I know how to help you. And if you feel like you want to go above and beyond, hey, think about becoming a YouTube member to help support this channel. Just want to say again, thank you so much, and I'm proud that you stuck around this long, and I'm sure your painting looks amazing. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, and as always, peace.